Hi guys, today we are talking evolution, all things evolution. Now, I understand that not everyone may believe in the theory of evolution, and that's fine. These are the facts that the state has asked us to present to you, and if you feel otherwise, you will be given the opportunity to defend your opinion on evolution at the end of the unit. So with a new unit comes new objectives. So first is research and observe evidence of common ancestry and diversity, such as natural selection and adaptations. Conclude how and why environmental conditions result in the origin of new species and cause evolutionary change. And lastly is to research the theory of evolution and defend it using current scientific data and knowledge. Our vocab words for this part of our chapter are evolution, which is the process by which different kinds of living organisms are thought to have developed and diversified from earlier forms during the history of Earth. Second is species, a group of living organisms that consists of similar individuals that are capable of exchanging genes or interbreeding. And fossils, the remains or impressions of a prehistoric organism preserved in the petrified form as a mold or cast in rock. Next is catastrophism. This is a theory that changes in the Earth's crust during the geological formation and its history have resulted chiefly from sudden, violent, and unusual events. Gradualism is a hypothesis that states that evolution proceeds chiefly by the accumulation of gradual changes over time. And uniformitarianism is a theory that says the changes in the Earth's crust during the geological history have resulted from the actions of continuous and uniform processes. Evolution is the change in living things over time. This is done through adaptations. These are inherited traits that give an advantage to the individual organism that can then be passed on to future generations. Things like long necks in giraffes, camouflage in certain organisms. Those are all adaptations that are passed from parent to offspring that make them more likely to survive in the environment. There were three main scientists who studied evolution. The first was Georges-Louis Leclerc de Buffon. He was a Frenchman, if you can't tell by his name, who really began understanding what evolution was. Then we had a scientist by the name of Jean-Baptiste Lamarck. He was an Englishman who really influenced Charles Darwin, or Eugene, which I believe his real name was. Darwin was the scientist who really published his findings on evolution and gave us the modern understanding of it that we have today. Darwin proposed that all living things were descendant from a common ancestor and that more complex forms of life arose from less complex forms. He traveled around the world aboard the HMS Beagle, which we'll get to in just a minute, and his main stop was at the Galapagos Island where he studied finches. There's a short video here. It is in the PowerPoint. I would encourage you to watch it. It really explains Darwin's time aboard the Beagle. Darwin used the theories of geological change that had already been published by Leclerc de Buffon and Lamarck to really focus his findings aboard the HMS Beagle. What he found was that fossils were traces of organisms that existed in the past. They knew this, they had had fossils, and they pretty much had already defined what it was. Then he looked at catastrophism. This is that theory that states that natural disasters such as floods and organic eruptions can totally change the environment in which they happen in, that change the environment and have happened often during Earth's long history. These lead to big spikes in evolution with organisms having to readapt themselves to their environment. Gradualism is the theory that Changes in landforms result from slow and continuous movement or changes over the long period of time of Earth's history. We can see gradualism. We know that Mount Everest grows about 2 to 4 centimeters every year. We know that there are parts in the ocean that are getting just as deep every year. And that's because of continental drift. The continents and the tectonic plates are constantly moving, leading to gradual changes that we can see after a long period of time. And then uniformitarianism is the geological process that has helped shape Earth that has been uniform over time, meaning that if one tectonic plate moves so much, the other ones are moving that much, roughly every year. So here we see catastrophism, a big catastrophic event like a volcanic eruption, earthquakes, floods, things like that. They change the environment and can cause mass extinction in the area. Gradualism, we actually have an example of gradualism in the state of New Hampshire. If you have ever been up to the Boulder Caves, or the gorge that's up north in like the North Conway area, what happened was at one point in time, this was probably an iceberg sitting between these two mountains that eroded away gradually over time, that left behind a river. So it looks like the river carved out the canyons, show the gradual change. This is an idea that Earth's history have occurred in small steps over a long period of time. And then uniformitarianism, we can see in these, they're called strata of rock, these stripes that show older rock is going to be up at the top or even down at the bottom, depending on what way the tectonic plates are moving. All right, we're going to stop here. We're going to do this in an activity. So do not worry about this part.